There are other stories of ins and outs. The exciting links have started to happen. We have links with defenders, we have links with attackers, and there are also links with lads heading the other way, Dave, to sort of balance the books. 3 lads who have been tied up together in a story are Quansah, Joe Gomez, and Isak at Newcastle. And you and I have been saying for ages, that's fanciful nonsense. That's not going to happen. He's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. If there is a real desire from the player, and if there's a desire from Newcastle to do some squad adjustment, and if Newcastle don't get Champions League, and so on and so forth, who knows? Who knows? But this story is back with a bang today. Walk us through it.
This is now that, it's been that Jim Carrey meme, hasn't it? You know, the one that says, so you're saying there's a chance. And we've always just held that kind of faint hope almost. And this doesn't necessarily mean it's stronger, as you said, but this just doesn't go away at all. And this is, we need to be clear on this, people. There's respect to journalists like David Ornstein and others saying that their info is Liverpool are in or looking specifically at Alexander Isak and doing a deal. And as we said on the last one, from digging around as much as we can, yeah, that's our info, that he's a serious target for Liverpool. And this kind of comes up yesterday a little bit from Talk Sport via Alex Crook, doesn't it? About him being a key target and willing to include Jarell Quansah and Joe Gomez. And I remember when I saw that yesterday, I was like, you know, lazy journalism, Trev, this is like the Gordon story from last summer, just rehashed a little bit. And yeah, whatever type of thing. It's just easy to play on. But as you know, I sent you that screenshot to say, I'm being told there's something in this from someone we both know is very reliable. And then late last night, the Times comes out with their story saying Jarell Quansah is a serious target for Newcastle this summer. Joe Gomez was going to be part of the deal for Alexander Isak. Now, this does absolutely not mean it's going to be done. And people are going to say this is 2 and 2 and getting 28 type of thing. I understand all that. But our info is this, this is not going away. And this is a serious thing for Liverpool. And digging further, Trev, as we've really tried to get something on this, Michael Edwards, that name is going to come up a few times because Michael Edwards is handling sales for Liverpool Football Club at the moment. And Michael Edwards from our info has been talking to Paul Mitchell, who's the sporting director or whatever he's called there at Newcastle. Does this mean definitely it's going to happen? We are not saying that for 1 second. But in terms of the excitement barometer, it has moved the needle a little bit. And this is not just pure dismissed, complete fanciful nonsense we maybe thought it might be. It's really starting to feel there's something to this. And yes, Newcastle have probably got to miss out on the Champions League. Yes, departures, all those things and those hurdles have got to be overcome. But I am at the stage now, would I simply dismiss this? No. Do I think it's likely? I've not flipped to a yes on that either, but it's right to be a little bit excited about this one.
I think it is. And it's even if it's only a reaction to this time last week where there were very strong, well, the week before, where there were very strong links to PSG for both Virgil and Ibu Konate. And it just felt as if the whole thing was coming apart if you were to believe the rumors. And of course, this is where we live, in the sort of hinterland between believing these things, reading the stories, and trying to have some sort of a common sense outlook. And we don't make these strong pronouncements either way. They belong in the comments section, which is great to see. And you work your way through the comments section and go as wild as you like in there, lads. There is a very strong statement there from Vernicio who says getting rid of Quansah would be nuts. And listen, I get that. That makes a lot of sense to me. He's a young kid. He looks like he's really got a lot going for him. But if you have a situation now where we're looking like we're going to be able to keep Virgil van Dijk around, and Joe Gomez is a saleable asset as well, and we really want to change our attack, maybe this is one of the levers that gets pulled. Listen, listen, these are above our pay grade. We just talk about what we see and what we hear. And this is very interesting. And I think an awful lot of people, whether it's lunacy, as our commenter says, or whether it's actually canny business sense, because we've got a few other things lined up and we have a young up-and-comer in the centre-half brigade who will be signing. Who knows? But it's bloody exciting, Dave, to think about someone of the calibre of Isak coming to the club, fanciful or not. The stories don't stop, though, man. The stories don't stop, and I'm really glad you mentioned the thing about the Edwards involvement and what that might mean in terms of sales and the connection with Mitchell at Newcastle. But one of the areas that we've been talking about all the time, and it's right back to the start of the show now, is fullback. Because clearly now we are going to have to replace Trent. I think I'm going to start talking now as if that's done deal. Just so, like, if that offends you and you're listening to the show or you're watching the show, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to talk about that as if it's a done deal, because I think it would be naive to think anything else at this point. So with that in mind, we are going to need a starting right back. I love what you mentioned about the Conor Bradley thing. Fair play to Conor Bradley's agent, as you said to me in a message earlier on. That's proper agent thing. They've got the club over a barrel. Now let's get whatever we can, milk whatever we can out of them. Fair play. It's good to see. And we all love Bradley. And we can all see the potential in Bradley. But Bradley's been available for about half of the time that he's been here. And that's an issue. So we are going to need a right back. And to listen to the received wisdom, Dave, from all people, we are going to need a left back. Unless you're a Robbo super fan and you can't see any fall off in his game at all, you're going to need someone on either side. The Kirkes story won't go away. There's a Fernandez story that's really interesting. And again, I think it was young Maguire who was floating this one. Walk us through the fullback stuff, because this is really interesting.
Yeah, the Kirkes name, it almost feels like the hottest one, doesn't it? Of all the links, the one who comes up the most, the one that feels most solid from what we've heard. And yeah, genuinely, like all the info, all the journalists we spoke to have said that's the one. I mean, we did David Lynch Media Matters. He said his info is that's the strongest one of any signing he could say at the moment, that Liverpool have got the framework there. And digging a little bit more again on this, because we're always trying to get info as everyone else is, Trev, that there's been talk that Caoimhin Kelleher could be included in that deal, which a keeper with a year left to go, who we all love Kelleher, but clearly wants to go and be a number one somewhere. It makes all the sense. If you could do a deal where Kelleher went with money for Kirkes, it's smart business for me. That feels like, Edwards doing back in the groove, good sales, smart business. So that's the first one. The second one, God damn that bloody Sam Maguire, the big-headed, I'll not insert my adjective there, but he called this player, and he profiled him, and a lot of people went, who was it, etc. And I'll be honest, when I first, it was like, who the hell is Martin Fernandez? And then you did a bit of digging, you did a bit of research, and I just literally did a show about an hour and a half ago with Bart from Up on Transfer Market Metrics, where he ran his profile, Trev. Be excited. If Conor Bradley deals in about 1,500 minutes a season, about half a Trent, this boy could really be the one to be the next one. And actually, from asking around, we'll come to a bit of this, but there's a lot of connections there with Porto especially. But in terms of profile, which people want to know, quick, good at assists, sort of line to line, good all-round player, but also good mixed passing. And by the way, I'm not saying he's Trent, but the kid can ping a ball. And yes, people will say small sample size. I get all that type of thing. However, the Porto angle, we've got a brilliant relationship with Porto. When we signed Luis Diaz and the way we structured that deal, because Porto have had financial issues, so we helped pay off some of their debt, worked well with them. We know Julian Ward, fluent in Portuguese, big navigator there of the Portuguese market. There's just a lot of things standing up for this kid this season. So, in terms of fullback developments, nothing's ever definite, like you say, but I'm at the stage where it's right to be excited for the Kirkes link. And I'm at the stage where, now that we've ran his profile and looked at him, at first I was like, who is Martin Fernandes? And now, Trev, who is Martin Fernandes, by the way? So, yeah, I'm excited by this one.
Can I ask you, just to round out the little summary you've given there, it's a small sample size, I take it, because he's very young still. Is he?
Yeah.
What age is Fernandes?
19.
19. Well, that would explain why he can't spell his name properly yet, I guess. He's putting an M there at the end of his name. Silly boy, silly boy. So that's a really interesting one. I love this. I love this story. I love the story around Kirkes, because people are wild excited about Kirkes, even though a fella you and I work with, young Hendrik, isn't quite as excited about Kirkes as other people are. And as Dave rightly points out on his show, and has done regularly recently, I guess it very much depends on what the balance is between the two fullbacks, because it does look like we're going to be signing a pair of starters. Or is that a bit much? Do you think it's going to be Robbo and a new starter? Do you think that's the likely thing next season? Because we know that, it's going to be whatever we can manage to raise in sales plus a paltry amount that will go to the actual transfer fees. Does it seem a little bit unlikely that we're going to get a baller in at both fullback positions to start for the new season? Because that would be a big ask, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression that one will be a starter, definitely, but I think you're leaning more towards the left. I mean, Kirkes is the hottest name, and you're thinking if he's coming in with that money they're talking, he's going to start realistically, and Robbo, you'd think, becomes the alternate, or his minutes reduce, if you want to phrase it that way. The way from it was put to us around Fernandes was, good old Martin, funny spelling name, is that they're talking around the 25 million quid mark, which screams all the hallmarks of, yes, it's quite high because of the potential, but the way they've balanced it is he's looking at the moment at about 1,500 minutes for his season. So if you add his minutes with Connor Bradley, you kind of get a full Trent, if that makes sense. So it's almost more he could be an alternate, but with Bradley in that situation. And I love Connor Bradley, but it's right to have concerns over those injuries and those hammies already, isn't it? So it feels like it's an alternate. So, I think you're left back. And if it's Hato, the other one from Ajax, yes, he's younger, but you feel they will have a more senior position, shall we say, than the right fullback. Unless, as the other names come in, it is Jermaine Frimpong, which would mean we're not going to defend at right back or on the right side all of a sudden, which will be fascinating to see, but that may just change the lineup. But yeah, I reckon it's one starter for either side, not for both.
You mentioned something that we should just flesh out a little bit there in the breakdown that you were given about the connection with Porto. It was kind of a throwaway comment. Just to go back to that, what is that and who is that, the connection?
Julian Ward, that used to be one of his previous roles, didn't he? An analyst within the Portuguese market. That is his speciality. Edwards is well connected in that area at the same time as well. We've also got a great relationship with Porto going back a number of years, even when Marco Grujic went there, but also when we bought Luis Diaz, we structured a deal really nicely for them to have a good relationship as well. I think we paid off a bit of their debt was the info we were given, because they were struggling a bit of their time, and helped with favorable payment terms, as they called it. So we have got really good connections for that club and that market. So do you know what? If you have them, leverage them.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Lean into every little advantage. We've already kind of talked about the likelihood of the possibility of Virgil extending. Ibu Konate's deal is, again, one of those ones that needs to get sorted, although not as urgently. And the rumors of him heading off to PSG will not go away either. He hasn't done a whole lot to quash them either, to be honest. And we know that's kind of his team. But let's be optimistic and say we keep the two best centre-backs in the league together next season. If the boys go that we've talked about earlier on, or even if just Joe Gomez or Quansah goes singular, we are going to need to get some recruitment in there, because it's getting a bit thin in that particular area. And we've been linked with a couple of big names. One that we've heard a million times before, well, certainly over the last two windows, and one that's a kind of a newbie because he's an up-and-comer, very highly rated youngster. In terms of recruitment for the Reds in the centre-half department, what are the stories that people have been hearing and that are doing the rounds at the moment?
Yeah, couple of names, and I got excited with these when I was sending the screenshots and the detail to you last night, Trev. So I think if you can see it on screen, people will know Dean Hujsen, won't they? The now Spanish international, young centre back at Bournemouth with a left foot, tall, maybe not the best aerial win rate, but a lot of people like this kid, don't they? And 50 million release clause, club's well briefed on it. Yeah, Liverpool are absolutely aware of that. And as we said last week, and all the info we're still getting is they are very aware. People say monitoring aware. However, give me an adjective you want, but Liverpool like this kid. You never know for definite if they're going to move, but very much on the radar. So the only concern, as I think people keep noticing, is we haven't had a new dad in the mix since Papa Diaz. Well, Papa Hujsen's an interesting one because Papa Hujsen on his social media retweets quite a bit of Little Dean's articles that link him to Real Madrid and Spanish clubs that way, which is quite interesting. But it's good to see someone following in Papa Diaz's footsteps. But I think it is important to note that Hujsen has said, idol Sergio Ramos, club he loves, Real Madrid. Does that mean he would turn down a move to Liverpool if Real Madrid weren't there? I think, that's a different thing. But it's just an important one to note there for the first name. The second name as well, and I don't know, maybe this is a little bit linked to homegrown concerns, isn't it? Because people keep mentioning that. Have we got enough numbers, all these youngsters homegrown? The second name that, again, has really come up strong this week, Liverpool have asked again about Mark Guéhi, the Crystal Palace centre-back, the England international for the homegrown, etc. People will talk fee, but it's important to remember he has a year left to go on his deal. That doesn't mean they'll give him away for buttons, and Palace have got money from sales, but they'll also know if they don't get a fee for him now, they're not going to get a fee for him at all. So, yeah, for really this week, interestingly, we had another, and this is not me trying to be like, mysterious Meg, but as you know, Trev, we also got another name, which we won't say, depending on what happens with Van Dijk that way as well, but we obviously don't want to even float that. But just for the likes of Kwanzaa going, for the likes of Gomez going, the names that we have got, Dean Hujsen at Bournemouth, Mark Guéhi at Crystal Palace.
I'm just going to be a real prick here and say that the name that you're referring to there in the potential of Virgil going and us needing a high profile, it's a belter. But we can't say anything. So yeah. It is a fact. We don't ever throw out stuff that hasn't come from somewhere half decent. But that is it. There's stories aplenty out there. The Hujsen thing, I mean, Papa Hujsen, not sure about that. Also not sure about any lad whose hero is Sergio Ramos. Maybe we don't want him around. But the Mark Guéhi thing's very interesting. I think Guéhi will go, I was just checking his age there. He's going to turn 25 in July. Which is just about perfect. And one of the big reasons that people were against Mark Guéhi before for Liverpool was that he's not a Klopp centre half. In other words, he's not a man. Yeah. We don't really know. Well, I don't really know what Arne Slot's preference in that regard is. I don't have enough sample size of him. I don't know about his previous teams in terms of the profile of centre-back height. So that could be, who knows? Who knows? Maybe Slot has a completely different notion about that player. And we do know that he'd be sort of plug and play. And he's very good Premier League quality. So who knows? Who knows? And I would imagine the young Spanish lad would cost a pretty penny. I can only see that as being big money. We have a couple more. This is brilliant. I mean, even what stage are we at with this show? We're like nearly 40 minutes in, and we're still talking about potential.
The first bit.
This is amazing. This is literally, we have not had a show like this for ages where there are that many possible links, and there's a couple left, and they're in the attacking sense. And I noticed that you haven't even written down in your notes, something that we spoke about earlier on, and we spoke about just before the cameras went live on this one in our WhatsApp chat as well, which is the thing that could potentially cause some attacking incomings is the unrelenting links to both Saudi and, brace yourself, Barcelona for both Luis Diaz and, again, brace yourself, the tall Uruguayan lad. Who'd have thunk it? Now, I think most of us can see how there could be a big bag on the table for him to go to the Saudi league, and he could clean up there, and it might be a thing he wants to do for his family. It could also be a thing Luis Diaz wants to do for his family. But we saw, speaking of Papa Diaz, we saw how much he would love. And listen, these guys, they grow up, they've got Real and they've got Barcelona in their minds. That's it. Yeah. They're the ultimate destinations. You can't blame people from that culture for thinking that. This is very interesting because, I can't see Barca forking out the money we want for Diaz or for Nunez. But maybe they would break the bank a little bit for Diaz if they thought it was the right profile, if they could move someone out the other way. What do you think in terms of that? What's going to be the trigger for incomings, and what incomings have you heard rumor? Because there's a name here I don't think a lot of people will have heard.
This is. I was going to sound like a CIA operative and use the word solid intel a second ago, but this is just like literally from everyone we're getting. Barca and Saudi seriously in for Luis Diaz. And in case you're thinking, where you get like. David Ornstein said this. Paul Joyce has mentioned it. We've said it before with like various journalists we've had on Media Matters. All the info we're getting is he's on again. It's that same Barca journal we talked to. Deco loves this player and wants him. Barca's problem, as Barca's problem always is finance. That is what it is. That's important to say. So we could debate that all along. If they don't have the finance, Liverpool will put up or shut up. Liverpool will say that to them again. However, that second area is so important. We mentioned this, and we'll kind of get to them again later on. But Michael Edwards, that man on sales, is handling the relationship, is our info, with Saudi specifically, because we know how close Darwin Núñez came to ending up going to Saudi Arabia in the January window. That, that's been well mooted. Saudi clubs asked about Luis Diaz in January. That's also Ornstein. Others have said that. They are looking at him again. And it kind of feels like, you never know this for definite, Trev, but it would make sense to think almost the case of he wants Barca. It's the club of his dreams. You get it. All those types of things. Absolutely. But if they can't find the money, I tell you what, forget all the other issues around it. Imagine if Saudi gave us a whopping great payment for Núñez and for Diaz this summer. I bet Michael Edwards and his chaps would be rubbing their hands together, wouldn't they, for that? And genuinely, from all the sort of info or the digging we're getting, I am now at the stage, and this could be wrong, so I'll get shot down. I'm now going to be surprised if Núñez and Diaz are at the club next season.
I will myself, primarily because I think the relationship has soured with Núñez. Despite the love that fans have for him, I think, the relationships that matter may not be as strong. And I think Diaz has always had one eye on the exit door, if we're being perfectly honest. And I'm not questioning the guy's application, either of them. They're great lads, very fond of them. But I think you're right. I think both of those are the most saleable assets that we have in that front line. In terms of we could get big money for them. And if they were willing, especially to take the Saudi bag, that's going to leave our boys in a lovely, lovely position when it comes to recruitment. Although, of course, it's big money we're going to have to spend out as well. Just on this, before we leave it, loads of lads saying there, we'll do a swap. K-Mac there was saying we do a swap with Jules Koundé, who's highly rated and one of the players that I think a lot of us would love to see coming in to supplement our defence or to be a starter, perhaps. It depends, again, on the balance, doesn't it, between the fullbacks. But there's a name there that you mentioned in passing, and it's all over the comments, and we should just give a second to it before we finish with the Liverpool section, and that is Frimpong. Now, people got all excited with themselves about the Frimpong thing, saying, because they saw that video where he did a Scouse accent.
Yeah.
Like, okay, calm down. But there could be something to this, because there are a lot of stories now, whether they originated with that and they've stayed originated with that. I think I've seen them from one or two more realistic sources, but it is a name that's going around a lot. For clarity, for people who don't know, people I know who watch a lot of football have said this guy's great going forward, that this guy is a super winger, that he's a super attacking fullback. If you're playing a back three or whatever, it looks good to have him on the flank. He can do it. But that when it comes to the more defensive fullback in a back four, that might not be the best fit for Frimpong, or might not be a fit at all. That's something I've heard. Just to address Frimpong briefly, because it is a name that's going around in this bundle. Have you heard anything there? Does there seem to be anything solid in that?
This almost confuses me a little bit, I have to be honest, because yes, heard it from asking around Liverpool, and there's a few reports, as people have put in the comments even tonight, that yeah, absolutely heard. We've looked at him. As you said, when you think of the profile of Frimpong, for anyone who watches the Bundesliga, Leverkusen, a big club, we played them in the Champions League. They play a back three, so he's wing back on the right, isn't he? So primarily his job, bomb on, get forward. And we did his profile on Transfer Market Metrics when we first got wind of it. And Bart's, he's analytical. It's Dr. Phil Barter. He's level-headed. He brings analysis. And he did the stats bit by bit. And he got to the first bit. And for a doctor who's mad and level-headed, I'll never forget the line. I can't do his Cockney accent, but fuck me, he can't defend, was an interesting description of right back at the time, realistically. And like, just in case you think that it's biased, I mean, his highest defensive metric was in like the 13th percentile, Trevor. Like, it literally is almost like he's attacking in his middle are like a top class right winger, and his defensive metrics Andy Carroll's type of thing, like that. It just, it's a completely different system. It's a completely different way. And almost just think about this, people. For me, if you bring in Frimpong and you've got Frimpong and Mo Salah, who's actually defending on the right-hand side? Who's actually doing some... And by the way, people will go, Szoboszlai. You will kill Szoboszlai asking him to do Mo Salah and Frimpong's defending. You will kill Konate, or he can shuffle across. You will destroy those two players. So I just can't see it. And for me, the only way that Frimpong makes any sort of sense is, for me, I don't want this to happen. If Salah went, I could understand that element in that regard. That I just, and people are putting there, aren't they, in the chat panel? He's got right winger written all over him. Does anyone want to change our right winger? Because if you do, you're absolutely insane. Let's be completely honest. So I hear the name, but I just can't get my head around it.
Yeah, I think to be fair, a lot of people are suggesting that Mo would move more central, but again, I don't know that is that going to work? Will that necessarily work? He does love that spot. He can manipulate that side of the pitch so well. He finds so much interesting space coming from that side. There was a comment earlier on. Apologies, I can't remember who it was who was saying that with the trend thing, it was way back at the start of the show. Well, at least poor old Konate will have a little bit of a break now, because he'll have someone hopefully who's a little bit more sort of locked into the defensive side of right back, and then we start talking about Frimpong. That's just going to break Ibu altogether. So yeah, interesting stuff. We need to get on, because we need to look at some other areas apart from Liverpool. But I don't really give a shit at this stage, because that was so exciting to be actually talking about our own club for a change. Let's, in the last 10 minutes. Go for it. Go for it.
Like, even this, a second Mo, and that is the title I'm going to give you for this one. We've done your centre backs. We've done you at links.
Oh, Amora, yeah.
Mohamed Amora.
Yeah.
This is one for the nerds. When I ran this, and we ran it a couple of hours ago with Bart, literally Bart's like an Austin Powers step. His glasses were steaming up. He had to like wipe them down. Like he was that excited for this boy. This guy is a proper data signing, as in like 18 goal contributions, 10 goals and assists in the Bundesliga for Wolfsburg, 12th in the table, so not a good Bundesliga team either, really struggling. This boy, our info was watched last night by the scouts. Guess who banged in a hat-trick for Algeria last night as well? Wow. So good recency bias, like really firing, really seen as a star. In terms of speed, one of the fastest players in the Bundesliga, literally as well. Nippy can play striker or left wing. So plays 2/3 of his game this season as the 9, but also a third on the left wing as well. Our info is that the data boys especially are really having a look at this guy. And part of the reason, Trev, is they believe they can get him from Union Saint-Gilloise, a team we know well that had big data as well, for about 25 million quid. Now, people will look at this, and this is what baffles me and you, I know, a little bit, because people will go, that's not sexy, that's stupid. We should be looking at Isak, and we should be looking at Alvarez and only players and Kuna of that caliber. How high were people when Michael Edwards and the data people came back last summer? They were like, it's getting back to it all. This is a database signing. So if you don't want to do these types of signing, why are you high on the likes of Michael Edwards and all the data boys coming back and gaining charge on that? It's one of those. I get it's not a sexy name. It's definitely not sexy in terms of Isak and Alvarez. I get all that. But this is one that our info says Liverpool are having a serious look at this player. And we've talked about it. If Núñez and Diaz go, you probably, you had Chiesa, there's question marks over Jota and all things like that. It would not surprise you if there's more than one attacker comes in. And they can't all be Alvarez or Isak price level, can they? They can't all just be automatic, that one. So if you're into all the data stuff and Edwards and all those boys being back, why wouldn't this intrigue you?
So here's where I am with this. Because you introduced this dude to me, I went and looked at what he was all about. 24 years of age, will turn 25 in a couple of weeks' time in May.
We love that age.
We do. He is 5'6", which is very small indeed, but also maybe a little bit of a late bloomer too. I'm looking at his senior career. So you mentioned Union Saint-Gilloise, who, of course, Liverpool are familiar with. Previous to that, he had played 57 games for Lugano, in which he scored 14 goals. Yeah. He had 18 in 32 for Union. And his loan move for Wolfsburg, as you said, has been highly successful with 10 in 24. And that's not to mention the assists. He has 13 in 33 for Algeria. This is not a long shot. This is a player of ability. And if he's been earmarked in the same way that, let's say, Sadio Mane and Mo Salah were, I mean, I'm all for it. I think this is very exciting. And I do like the idea of someone who people won't see coming, if you know what I mean, who could fit in very nicely. So that's hugely exciting. I'm glad we have that one at the end.